Pretty well-packed animal trail right through here. You see Gabby's a little concerned with what's going on over here. She knows how fast they move. They could just come out of anywhere, anytime, and get her. Best to be aware of every direction. Oh, did you hear that? Oh, I hope that picked up. See, she's still concerned with figuring out where it went. I'm wondering if this here is what we heard break. See that right there? That looks really new. There's some tracks in here, but it's hard to tell what kind of tracks. Is this what we heard break, Gabby? Is that it right there? It was a big snap. A little snap and then a big snap. I would say that might be it right there. Okay. Look at the size of those trees. Massive. Rolling.
Okay, good. I'm Sam or Samantha Ritchie, and I live down here most of the time. I actually live in an RV down this, just right over here from a tavern that's in town here in Greenwater. And late last night, about 11 o'clock, I started walking back this direction toward my RV, and then I started hearing sounds that were coming from right behind those trees over there. And it was very characteristic. It almost sounded like an owl, but it was a little bit, the reason I dismissed that, because at the end of the sound, it was a repetitious sound. It was louder, and it was deeper, and at the end, it was very guttural. So it couldn't, unless the bird was 50 pounds, but because it certainly wasn't anything I've ever heard before, especially coming from a bird or an owl or an animal, and certainly not a human. So once I heard that a couple times, my red flags went up in my head, and I went back into the tavern and I said, "Hey guys, did you see?" And all of a sudden I was telling them about it. I said, "Yeah," and they were saying, "We've heard this out here too." And one of the guys, of course, thinks it's an owl, but the other said, "No, I don't think so." So I come back out here and I listened a couple of times, and I started trying to imitate the same sound. And the more I imitated, I tried to do it loudly back to it. It seemed to encourage it to do it more.
I've heard that before.
So it was going back and forth. So we had this little rapport going back and forth. And I'd stop, and then it would slow down. And then I'd do it again and start increasing. Well, that kind of, I went back in the tavern and said, "Hey guys, this is really getting serious here." And so one of the guys and one of the gals that work here, we went out and we rushed out because we noticed the sound was coming that direction. So we went on the other side of the tavern, past the beer garden, and then we went right up against the gate backside of the property and started doing that. And the sound was a lot closer.
So it was coming toward you since it's from the time it started.
We were coming closer to it.
Okay.
And it seemed to be coming closer from the trees. And so we stayed out there, both two of us, me and another person, went ahead and doing the sounds. And
could you do one of those for me?
I don't know, everybody around here.
I know that it's really hard to imitate them, but just kind of give us an idea.
Well, it's kind of like something similar to this.
Okay.
But it
kind of like the barred owl sound.
Yeah, it's kind of like but it was a certain pattern. I was trying to imitate the pattern, and I couldn't do it quite, but I kept doing it and seemed to respond back more so. And so, and this kept going for 40 minutes. And I finally walked everybody went inside. I went ahead and walked way on the opposite side, closer to the entrance of the street on the side of the tavern. And as I walked closer to the woods, I could tell that it was very close, like within 100, probably less than 100 yards away in the trees.
So you think it was on this side of the river?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
As a matter of fact, it was on this side of the river, right up in this level area. So it definitely made its way up here. Now, another person who was staying on the backside here, I also heard, I'm not going to mention any names, but they heard it and says it didn't sound quite like anything like an owl either. And they were listening to it and they could hear it started here and it started migrating that way. And finally it started to become more distant after I had already gone, since I'm tired, so I went to bed. But it was a very exciting thing to hear.
I'll bet it was.
Yeah, so I've been thoroughly convinced that since I've been up here that they exist in the woods. I've gone up the same trail that you have, Christoph, and I think that's what you call it.
Yep.
And then, but after last night, I figured since they've heard the familiarity of my voice that next time I take that trip up there, they'll know, oh, that's a similar voice, and hopefully that attracts some attention.
They'll be familiar with you.
They'll be familiar with it. So I think it's just very, very timid creatures with humans, and they have to really get to know you, I think, before they decide to warm up to you and get a little bit closer, let themselves be seen or heard more often. So.
Yeah, yep. And there's young ones out here that are just so curious.
And you know, quite honestly, that could have been a younger one that was doing it, because it certainly, when it did the lower growl sound, it certainly sounded like something could have been a smaller creature versus not a bird, but a smaller creature, not like the giant 9 foot, you
Yeah.
know, 7 to 9 foot Sasquatch.
The sound wasn't going to knock you over,
No,
but it
no.
was loud.
But certainly, it's probably, as you noted, there been a lot of the younger ones that are running around up here. So they probably travel through the woods
Yep.
late at night, just exploring around and stuff.
Yep.
So.
I think they check us out at night.
Yeah, so I'm stoked about it. I'm gonna, you know, further look into it myself and be looking.
Well, that's really
You know.
cool. That is
Yeah.
really, really cool.
So that's one of the reasons I love living up here in Greenwater, for a lot of different reasons. This just adds one more element to the mystery, I guess, of living up here, you know, which is great.
Well, that's really
know.
cool.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you can think of you want to add to it? Oh, you were telling me that you had found a recording on the computer that...
Oh yeah, what was interesting about that, let me cover that real quick, and of course, I'm not going to play it necessarily. It was very similar to what I just did, but when we heard that sound, and I was, so that sounds familiar. It says a month or two ago, I went on the internet and pulled down or downloaded some sounds of other places where they heard the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch, and I had that on my phone. And so I went through the files and I found one that says, this is it, look at that. So I went inside, and the guy that heard it, I played it for me. He thought for a second, oh yeah, that's it. He says he thought for a second that I went out there and recorded it because it was identical to what we heard. I said, no, this is a sound that came from an internet file that I found a month ago, and he about fell off the chair. So it was just validation that what we heard was in fact matching up to some of the files that had been documented or filed about that. So I have no doubt in my mind that what we heard was the species we know as the Sasquatch. So
Wow,
you know.
cool. Well,
That's
thank
all
you
I can
very
do
much.
right now.
That's really cool. So yeah,
There'll be more later, perhaps.
okay. Well, I'll look forward to talking with you again about it.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Bye.